When the person you have shared decades of life with is suddenly gone, the silence can feel louder than any noise you have ever known. It isn't just an empty chair at the table or the absence of a voice in the other room. It is a space inside you that seems to stretch endlessly. At 60, 70, or beyond, this silence can weigh even more heavily because you are not only mourning the person, you are also facing the truth that the years ahead may be fewer than the years behind. That awareness makes the loss sharper, doesn't it? You may find yourself wondering, how do I walk forward when the one who always walked beside me is no longer here? It's important to understand that what you feel is not a weakness or a failure to cope. Grief at this stage of life is not the same as grief at 30 or 40. When we are younger, there is often more distraction, more future, more noise to soften the blow. Later in life, the quiet of the home, the slower pace of days, and the body's own changes make us sit more closely with our pain. That can feel unbearable at times. But here is the gentle truth. The silence that feels like an enemy now can, with time, become a teacher. The empty space is not only a reminder of absence, it is also an invitation to listen inwardly, to hear your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own still living presence. That doesn't mean you have to like it. It simply means you are allowed to notice it without judgment. Imagine for a moment that this quiet is asking you a question. What is it showing you about yourself that you may have overlooked when life was full of another person's presence? Sometimes the answer is painful. Sometimes it reveals loneliness, regret, or fear. But sometimes, if you sit with it gently, it reveals resilience, strength, and even forgotten dreams that might still be waiting for you. You may remember Helen, a neighbor down the street, or someone like her, a woman in her late 60s who lost her husband after more than 40 years of marriage. At first, she described the silence of her home as a punishment I didn't deserve. But over time, she began to see it differently. She told me one day that the silence was where she started to talk to herself kindly for the first time in her life. She discovered her own voice, one that had been quieted by years of putting someone else's needs first. This is not to say the pain disappeared. It didn't. But she learned that pain and self-discovery could live side by side. I wonder if you can allow yourself to think of your own silence that way, not as a void, but as a companion that, though difficult, can also hold surprising wisdom. Let yourself ask gently, in these quiet hours, what part of me is asking to be heard? Grief may never leave, but your relationship with it can change, just as your body and mind have changed through the decades. In this moment, you are invited not to fight the silence, but to breathe with it, to let it be part of your journey rather than something you must escape. And if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments where you are reading this from. Sometimes even sharing a place, a city, a small corner of the world reminds us that while each of us is surrounded by our own silence, none of us is truly alone. One of the hardest parts after losing the person who shared your days is that time itself seems to fall apart. Morning and night blur together, meals lose their meaning, and hours stretch endlessly. That lack of rhythm can deepen loneliness and even make grief feel heavier. But one of the gentlest ways to begin finding your footing again is by creating small routines, tiny anchors that hold you steady when the waves feel too strong. It doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, the simpler the habit, the more powerful it becomes. Margaret, a 72-year-old widow I once spoke with, told me how mornings were her most difficult time. She would wake up and, without her husband beside her, feel a rush of dread. For weeks, she stayed in bed far longer than usual, pulling the covers over her head. Then one day, she decided to start making a cup of tea every morning at the exact same time, even if she didn't feel like it. At first, it was mechanical: boil water, place the tea bag, pour, sip. But slowly, that ritual began to change something. She told me, it wasn't just tea anymore. It was proof that I could begin a day, even if I didn't know how I would end it. That simple act became her quiet strength, her way of stepping into life one small sip at a time. Perhaps for you it could be tea, or maybe it's opening the curtains at sunrise, taking a 10-minute walk, or writing one line in a journal. The act itself matters less than the consistency. Think of it like planting seeds. One by one, they seem insignificant, but over time they create a garden that brings color back into your days. If you're wondering where to start, try choosing just one daily ritual. Keep it modest. Promise yourself you will repeat it at the same time each day, even if it lasts only a few minutes. Notice how your body responds to this small thread of predictability. Do you feel a little more grounded, even if only for a moment? These moments are not meant to erase grief, but to remind you that life still holds rhythm and you are capable of joining it again. And I want to say this gently, don't pressure yourself to build a perfect schedule. At this stage of life, flexibility is just as important as consistency. If you miss a day, it doesn't mean you failed, it simply means you begin again tomorrow. The point is not perfection, but kindness toward yourself. Remember, even the smallest ritual is a declaration. I am still here. My life, though changed, still carries worth. And if you find comfort in stories like Margaret's, in thoughtful reflections and practical steps for these tender years, I invite you to subscribe. That way you won't miss the gentle reminders and real examples of people who, like you, are finding their way through loss. Sometimes what helps most is knowing you don't have to figure it all out alone. When someone you love deeply leaves this world, it isn't only your heart that breaks. It is your body that feels the impact too. You may notice that sleep becomes restless, meals no longer taste the same, or that your energy disappears even when you haven't done much. These changes can feel frightening, but they are not a sign that you are falling apart. They are the body's natural response to grief. When the stress of loss strikes, your system releases chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you as if for danger. In younger years, your body might bounce back more quickly, but after 60, the balance is more delicate. The heart may race, digestion may slow, and immunity can weaken. You might even feel aches in your chest or sudden fatigue that you cannot explain. Knowing this doesn't erase the discomfort, but it can soften the fear. You are not broken, you are grieving, and your body is telling its part of the story. There is wisdom in listening to those signals with kindness instead of frustration. Imagine your body as a loyal companion who has walked with you through decades of life. Now, in this time of sorrow, it is simply asking for gentler care. That might mean choosing smaller meals that are easy to digest when appetite is gone, or allowing yourself to nap briefly instead of pushing through exhaustion. It might mean setting an earlier bedtime, even if you wake in the night, or taking a slow walk around the block to remind your muscles that movement is still possible. Every small gesture is a form of compassion toward yourself. It can help to remember that grief is not only emotional, it is physical. Many people tell me they feel guilty for being tired, or for not wanting to cook, or for forgetting simple tasks. But guilt has no place here. Your body is doing its best under a heavy burden. Instead of asking, "Why am I so weak?" perhaps you can gently ask, "What does my body need from me today?" Sometimes the answer is water. Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it is a little sunlight on your skin. This shift in perspective, away from judgment toward care, can bring relief. One widower, James, 68, shared with me that after his wife passed, he thought something was terribly wrong with his health. He was dizzy, unable to focus, and often had stomach pains. After seeing his doctor, he learned these were normal stress responses. With that knowledge, he stopped panicking at every symptom and instead began taking small steps. Light meals, steady hydration, gentle stretching. Within weeks, his body began to feel less like an enemy and more like an ally. You may find the same comfort in understanding your body is not betraying you, it is grieving with you. Be patient with it. Care for it as you would care for a dear friend who has been through a shock. And let yourself remember, healing does not mean rushing back to your old self. Healing here means allowing both your body and your heart the time they need to find a new rhythm together. Loneliness after losing a spouse can feel like a wall that separates you from the world. You may look at the phone and think, "Who would I even call?" Or notice a social invitation and feel an ache rather than excitement. It is natural to want to retreat, especially when your heart feels fragile. Yet human connection, even in its simplest form, has a quiet power to ease the weight of grief. And connection doesn't mean forcing yourself into crowded rooms or endless conversations. Sometimes it begins with one gentle step, so small it almost seems insignificant, but repeated steadily, it becomes a bridge back to life. You might start by writing down 3 names, people you trust or people who make you feel safe, even if you don't speak to them often. Choose one of those names and reach out once a week. It could be a short phone call, a text message, or even sending a photo with a memory attached. The point is not the length of the exchange, but the act of reminding yourself, "I still have a thread that ties me to another human being." As days pass, these threads weave together into a net that can hold you when you stumble. Once you feel ready, try adding a small outside connection, a neighborly hello, attending a library reading, sitting in a church gathering, or joining a walking group. You do not need to stay long. The act of showing up, even briefly, signals to your heart that you are not as alone as grief sometimes insists. Think of this as an experiment rather than a commitment. Try one community activity in a month. See how your body and spirit respond. Do you leave feeling drained, or do you notice a flicker of warmth, even for a moment? The answer will guide your next step. Remember, this is not about filling the space your spouse left. No one can do that. It is about letting your life hold small pockets of warmth again. A woman named Clara, 75, once told me that after her husband's passing, she refused every invitation for almost a year. Then one day, she allowed herself to attend a knitting circle at her local community center. She sat quietly, barely speaking, but she listened to the laughter around her. For the first time, she said, I felt the silence inside me soften. That small moment gave her the courage to return the next week, and eventually those women became her circle of strength. Perhaps you might find your own version of such a circle, not by pushing yourself, but by taking slow, deliberate steps. If you wonder whether this is possible for you, consider asking yourself gently, who do I feel safest with right now? Where could I step in, even for a short time, without pressure? These questions are not demands, they are invitations. And in following them, you might find that connection grows, not by force, but by patience, kindness, and the quiet courage of showing up just once more. There comes a moment after the initial storm of grief has passed when you begin to ask yourself what it means to carry on. Not to forget, not to replace, but to live in such a way that honors both the love you shared and the years that still lie ahead of you. Love does not vanish with death, it transforms. It becomes memory, it becomes presence in absence, it becomes the gentle whisper that accompanies you when you least expect it. Some people find comfort in creating rituals that give this invisible love a place to rest. Lighting a candle each evening, keeping a small corner of the house as a space of remembrance, or cooking a favorite meal once in a while. These are not signs that you are stuck in the past. They are signs that you are allowing love to take on a new form. A man named Robert, now in his late 70s, once told me how he struggled with anniversaries after his wife passed. The dates loomed over him like heavy clouds. But instead of avoiding them, he decided to mark them by planting a flower each year in his garden. He said, "It felt like I was giving our love roots in the earth, something that kept growing even though she was gone." What ritual might feel right for you? It doesn't need to be public or grand. Sometimes the quietest gestures speak the loudest to the heart. Aging has a way of changing how we view time. In younger years, we might ask, how much do I have left? Later in life, the question becomes softer. How do I want to live with the time that remains? Grief adds another layer.
How do I live with love that is still here, even when the person is not? These questions are not meant to be answered quickly. They are companions to be carried. You may find that journaling your memories brings peace, or that speaking your spouse's name aloud keeps them close. Some people choose to share stories with grandchildren, passing on not just the memory of a person, but the values, laughter, and tenderness they embodied. Each act becomes a way of weaving love into the fabric of the present. Perhaps you might pause and ask yourself, what small practice helps me feel most connected right now? Is it a prayer, a photograph, a walk to a familiar place? Let that question guide you gently. The answers may change with time, and that is natural. Healing does not mean erasing what was, it means learning to walk with it differently. As you reflect on your own path, know that the ache you carry is proof of the depth of your love. With patience, that ache can soften into something more bearable, a companion rather than a weight. You are not leaving your spouse behind. You are carrying them forward in a new way, allowing their presence to shape how you live today.
And if these words speak to you, I invite you to stay connected by subscribing so you can continue receiving gentle guidance for the journey ahead. More importantly, I would love to hear from you. What small practice helps you feel most connected to your loved one today? Your answer might not only bring comfort to you, but also to someone else walking the same path.